It's trade deadline day, and the 49ers have already made a move. Kyle Shanahan said that he'd be surprised if they made one. He's probably just fibbing a little bit, though. Yesterday, during his post game or post Monday teleconference, it wasn't teleconference, his conference call with the media, but 49ers were working on something, and it was for former Houston Texans pass rusher Charles Omenihu. So, what are the 49ers getting out of this guy? Why do they need him? I think it's clear that this 49ers defense has been rather punchless this season. It's definitely not the 2019 defense, but it hasn't even been the 2020 defense. In fact, according to all the advanced metrics, EPA, DVOA, the 49ers defense has been a below average unit in 2021. They are committing way too many penalties. They are garnering way too few turnovers. They rank second to last in takeaways in the NFL, and they're simply not changing the game and impacting the game the way that a good defense should. So the 49ers need a defensive boost, and they decided to go the pass rusher route with Charles Omenihu to get one. Now, Omenihu is a good player as far as situational pass rushing. He's racked up hits, he's racked up pressures. He had more quarterback hits than J.J. Watt in about 200 fewer snaps on that Texans team in 2020. His pressure rate this season is 13.8%, which is higher than Nick Bosa's. But the caveat here is that there have been fewer snaps than Nick Bosa, who's already at 350 snaps or so on the season, while Omenihu is at 207 on the season. So the sample size is smaller here. However, the 49ers have found it worth it to ship out a future late round pick for a player who still is on his rookie contract this season and next season. The 49ers will only owe Omenihu $450,000 on the salary cap here in 2021, where they obviously have limited room. The way that works, it's a 17-week season. You divide a player's base salary by 17 because he gets weekly paychecks, right? And because we're already moving on to week 9, I think, right now. We're in a situation, or maybe week 8. God, I lose track. But anyway, we're halfway there, and you prorate the salary when a player comes over and trades. So the salary cap hit is not large. The draft capital expenditure is not large. And Omenihu is still under contract for another season. Therein lies the big difference between a smaller acquisition like this and obviously a much larger one like the Rams acquisition of Von Miller. That cost a lot more in terms of draft capital for the Rams, so had to use 2 higher picks to grab Von Miller, even though Denver is paying most of his salary. You saw Kansas City go out and acquire Melvin Ingram for a 6th-round pick, but that's also more expensive than this trade for Charles Omenihu to the 49ers because the contract for Melvin Ingram is significantly bigger. Plus, both of those other guys, they're 32 years old. Von Miller and Ingram, both having productive seasons, by the way. I think they'll, at least on paper, immediately help both of the Rams and the Chiefs. But both of those guys are older and only under contract for this season. The 49ers weren't looking for a starter at the opposite edge spot. They're not that desperate on the defensive line, but they want to give their defense a boost. So they went with a starter who's only 24 years old, not 32, and who was much cheaper in terms of draft capital and also, I guess, in terms of financial capital since he's on his rookie contract in Charles Omenihu. It's a money ball like move for the 49ers. They think they've got a guy with high upside. I mean, he's 6'5", 280 pounds. If you take a look at our piece on The Athletic right here, you can see that we talk about the boost that Omenihu can bring. Our Texans writer said, on the surface, Omenihu is exactly the type of player the rebuilding Texans should want to keep. The 2019 5th-round draft pick tied J.J. Watt for the team leading QB hits last season, and he currently leads the Texans in pressure rate at 13.8%, which is, again, really good, top 10 out of all defensive linemen in that 207 snap sample size. But Omenihu had an inconsistent role on this Texans team. He was a healthy scratch for 2 games before the team released veteran Whitney Merciless to reduce a logjam along its defensive line. My analysis from the 49ers perspective, their pass rush could use a little bit more juice. Nick Bosa's Nick Bosa, but the bookending edge spot could use a boost since D Ford's snap count remains relatively limited, and since Samson Ebukam has generally disappointed. This is true although Cincinnati just delivered his best game of the season so far against the Bears with 5 pressures. He only had a max of 1 pressure in all the games before then. Plus, with defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw done for the season, the 49ers are looking to augment a weakened interior by sliding Eric Armstead inside more often. I think that's a really key point to remember here. And with Omenihu, you have edge rushing capability. He has shown the ability to get after the quarterback, hit the quarterback, get sacks over his 2+ seasons in the league. 3 sacks in one season, 4 sacks in the other. No sacks this year, but that pressure rate is good. And pressure rate is generally more predictive of future ability to reach the quarterback than sacks are. So we know that he can get to the quarterback. We know that he has potential off the edge, but Omenihu is also 6'5", 280. So he's not a small guy. He hasn't been a great run defender, but I think the 49ers believe that, A, he can be fairly rigid against the run on the outside and base downs if they play him, in certain situations, in certain rotations. They can develop into that under Chris Kasarik. And B, he has seen some sparse action at the defensive tackle positions throughout his 3+ years. And at 6'5", 280, it isn't unreasonable to think that the 49ers will also want to slide Omenihu inside to really alleviate the biggest problem right now along this defensive front, and that is just a relatively thin and weak defensive tackle position against the run as far as strength on the inside, just man strength on the inside. Javon Kinlaw is done for the season. DeForest Buckner's obviously not on this team anymore, but the hope with Kinlaw would be that he would replace Buckner and maybe even be a little bit better of a run defender and a little bit more of a block gobbler inside because of his larger and stronger body. But that's all flamed out with Javon Kinlaw now in IR after having undergone surgery, and the 49ers are getting pushed around a little bit up front on those interior runs. And that is preventing the edge rushers from getting 100% of the pass rushing opportunities that they should have. The 49ers need to find creative ways to get better on the inside, and I think that primarily involves Eric Armstead sliding over, facing guards even more often than on just obvious pass rushing situations, and that means bolstering edge depth. If you get enough quality guys, they don't have to be splash signings, you reach a critical mass where the defensive line becomes really, really effective. The 2019 49ers saw that. Obviously, this team doesn't have as much star power in 2021, but I think Omenihu is a critical mass signing who can allow Armstead to kick inside, and then Omenihu himself can also move inside on scant downs, on certain situations, because he's 6'5", 280. So it just makes the line better and not that high of a cost for the 49ers. I mentioned that down here. Increased firepower on the edge may let them do that, so the 49ers hope that Omenihu can contribute to a positive domino effect. He's a better pass rusher than run defender, and the 49ers have previously seen success when attaining a critical mass of capable pass rushers. So this is a sum of the parts kind of situation. That's why the 49ers went out and did it. They obviously have a different philosophy than the Rams, who have pushed all of their chips into the middle of the table for this 2021 season. If the Rams don't win a Super Bowl, it's going to be a massive failure, and they're going to have a really tough time drafting in the future. But I understand, given the fact that the Rams have already pushed 80% of their chips into the middle of the table with the Stafford trade and all the other trades that spent a lot of draft capital, they might as well have gone to 100%, and that's what they did with Von Miller, trading those second and third rounders. If you're chicken in the middle of the road, you're going to get run over. So the Rams at 80%, I mean, there was no reason to stick there. Their defense had eroded after the salary cap forced them to jettison a number of starters last year. The Rams want to get back into that defensive elite. You bring in Von Miller at age 32, still a very productive edge rusher, and you mortgage the future for it because you think with Matt Stafford, you could win the Super Bowl this year. The 49ers also believe that they are still contenders, as they should believe. You saw what they did to the Bears. It's just going to have to be an offense-driven team for the 49ers this season. And I think what they did against Chicago indicated that they're capable of that. They just have to be more consistent. But the talent is there. Jimmy Garoppolo can play. It's his birthday, by the way. He turns 30 years old today on the trade deadline. Kind of funny that I find it ironic that a lot of people thought the 49ers would trade him, but he turns 30 on the trade deadline, the day that they won't trade him. But whatever. Well, I digress. Jimmy Garoppolo was able to execute an efficient offense behind a very good pass blocking offensive line against the Bears. 49ers ranked number 4 in PFF grade in both pass and run blocking. Elijah Mitchell unlocked the outside zone. The play action and the drop back game were there with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Mohamed Sanu doing work. George Kittle comes back soon. 49ers are absolutely capable of some fireworks offensively. It's the defense that has to get better. Number 20 in EPA, number 17 in DVOA. So far, this has been a below average 49ers defense. We can talk about the reasons until we're blue in the face. A big one is that interior defensive line health issue with Joan Kinlaw being gone and the domino effect from that. You also have the fact that Jason Verrett, the 49ers top cornerback, is done for the season. And that secondary injury situation is only getting worse with Jimmy Ward expected to miss at least one game. And it's a big one here coming up against the Cardinals. So you can see that the defense is leaking oil for the 49ers. It was clear against the Bears. They need a boost, and a rush over coverage team is going to want to reach that critical mass of good quality pass rushers to tip the scales, to allow that rush to fuel the coverage, to allow everything to fall into place. At the end of the day, the 49ers need to create more takeaways. They need to commit fewer penalties, especially those defensive pass interference penalties. And they still firmly believe that a strong, deep pass rush can get them closer to that goal as they aim to contend in this 2021 season. So that's what this signing of Charles Omenihu is all about. The advanced stats like this guy. They might even love this guy if you look at that 13.8% pressure rate. I still call it a smaller move, but the totality of good, smaller moves turns into a good overall shift for a defense. And the 49ers have missed on some of the big picks. Obviously, this front office has gotten a lot of criticism. But one thing that they have done is that they've allowed smaller good moves to snowball in a positive direction, right? We always talk about the lower round draft picks delivering for the 49ers. The fifth round has almost become, this rallying cry for the 49ers personnel acquisition because they've gotten so many good players in the fifth round and maybe now even the sixth round when you look at Elijah Mitchell. But the fifth round started with George Kittle, went to Dre Greenlaw, and there's been other names that have produced from that slot for the 49ers. Well, guess where the Texans drafted Charles Omenihu just a couple seasons ago? In the fifth round. So maybe that tells you everything you need to know. Maybe the 49ers can scrounge the value that they feel they need here to bump that defense up a little bit to slightly above average, from below average to a little bit above average, and they could pair that with a consistent offense. Boom, it's going to be a new season for the 49ers. It's a long way to go. It's a novel. They just wrote another chapter. So let's see how this acquisition does, starting against the Cardinals on Sunday. Everybody take care.